Beyond the Pelvis is hosted by Dr. Keneal Siegel, a pelvic floor PT and intuitive healer, and Laura Haraka, a somatic practitioner and breathwork facilitator. Each week, we explore alternative and holistic approaches to healing chronic pelvic pain and other painful or chronic conditions. Join us and other experts in mind, body, and spiritual healing as we discuss a wealth of modalities ranging from ancient practices to modern therapies that challenge the conventional Western model of treatment. Let's get right to it.
So welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Pelvis. Today we have with us Gena Rho. So Gena is a certified clinical somatic educator. Her somatic training is in the tradition of Thomas Hanna's neuroscience-based somatic movement education. Gena is a lead teacher for Essential Somatics Movement Teacher training in the Northeast United States. Her private clinical somatics practice is in Maplewood, New Jersey and New York City, where she works with clients of all ages to help them regain control of muscle function and improve efficiency of movement. In addition to working with one-on-one clients, Gena teaches workshops and classes, leads retreats, and runs professional development programs for educators and corporate seminars. Gena's career as a modern dancer includes performing and teaching internationally as a member of the Trisha Brown Company. She has an MFA in dance from NYU TISCH School of Arts, and Gena has been a student of other somatic work through her dance career, including the Alexander Technique and body-mind centering. Welcome to the podcast. You've been very busy.
Or maybe that's just an indication of my age. That's really, I've had a long life, busy life. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
It's nice to meet you.
Me.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about, we'll get into all the things that you do, but Can you speak about specifically somatics and how you got involved in that?
Sure. So here's the real story, which is why I came to this particular school of somatic work. My oldest son didn't crawl. I was an educator, classroom teacher before I became a professional dancer. When I had my first son, I knew, even though the pediatrician told me, and I think my mother was with me at that visit, it's okay if he doesn't crawl. He would get up on all fours, but he would kind of get stuck and he couldn't locomote and move forward toward toys. And I was like, well, that is not okay. When we assess kids in early childhood, early development, he needs to crawl. It's important for convergence of eye function and so many things, right? Development, educational development. Right. So I had to pattern crawling for him. I knew I needed more information. Like as the years went on, we got OT for him. He aged out of OT, didn't really progress. So he was disconnected from the center of his body. So they described it as low muscle tone. It translated to him having a hard time opening bottles, for example, when he was 6 and 7 years old, like a basic water bottle. He had a hard time unscrewing. Terrible handwriting, couldn't grasp and hold onto monkey bars because he didn't have the integration and strength. Some people would call it core strength, but it's so much more than that, which I'll get into. So I had to let him fail, really is what ended up happening. He got to about 13 years old and wanted to play ultimate frisbee, which requires a lot of running. He really struggled. It was so painful to watch from the sidelines. Him trying to figure out how to get to be fast when he was disconnected from the center of his body, could not connect to his power, which is in the front of the body. So I had a colleague who I worked with at the local yoga studio who had studied Thomas Hanna's work and this school of somatic. And I started working with her. I knew that was it was a missing piece for me and for Ethan. And so fast forward, I did my training with Martha Peterson, who was here in New Jersey. I ended up taking over her practice. And so I started working with Ethan. I waited until here's what I did. And this is sort of the parent piece. I waited and I said, do you want my help? I think I can help you get faster and build connection so that you can strengthen. And that's what we did. Fast forward to him applying to college. And he said to me, even though he was interested in journalism and the editor of his high school paper, he said, the only thing I really care about is playing ultimate frisbee. So he applied to all the top 25 schools that had D1 programs. He went to UMass and played D1 ultimate frisbee.
Wow.
He got fast. So needless to say, he got fast and was able to connect. So that's my through line and the reason for coming to the work that I do. But there are a lot of layers to it. That was kind of the first step. It was wanting more information. I was teaching yoga at the time, that I was kind of like, do I do another yoga training? I don't think so. I think I want a deeper level of information that's a little bit more general.
I'm just curious, what was your son's diagnosis?
Low muscle tone.
Slow muscle tone. Okay.
Yeah, low muscle tone. That was the OT diagnosis. Yeah.
So he received treatment with that in OT.
Yes. But they usually age out about, I think it's like 10 or 11 years old. He was not, they sort of like, yeah, he's done. He progressed as far as we're going to get him, but there was something missing.
So what did you offer that he was not getting in OT?
So that leads to what Thomas Hanna's body of work is, which is a very specific neurofeedback, which is movement, and it's identifying where there's a disconnect in brain to muscle function, right? Which Thomas Hanna described as sensory motor amnesia, right? Where there's a memory loss from the brain to muscle function. Another way of describing it is where the nervous system is unconscious to how to move something. Ethan was unconscious to the center of his body, right? So literally he was kind of spilling forward at the core, right? The front of his body. His back was working, doing all the work. And he really couldn't propel and push himself off. The thing that grounds us through our feet is being able to connect to the front of the body, right? So I helped him with movements. They're called, the way that we do the movements are critical in this work. They're called appendiculation. And they're very intentional, very focused movements. It's a veterinary term that helps to reset the nervous system and control of muscle function.
So what else do we use this type of somatics for? Is it for just people with low muscle tone, or what else?
So Tom Hanna created this work to address pain. That's really what the work is designed for. So often, pain accumulates over time and over a nervous system losing the ability to be in balanced control, right? If you trip and fall or you twist your ankle, you might ignore that and push through. And over time, there might be an imbalance and there might be a compensation on the other side. If that's allowed to continue, you can see how you might walk with, more weight on one side and you don't even realize it. That's unconscious, right? You're not aware of it. Thomas Hanna described that as sensory motor amnesia. The way that we address that kind of imbalance and amnesia is this process and method of pendiculating. It's like a yawn. Cats do it, all animals do it. And that's so there are very specific movements that are in patterns of basic human development, flexion of the spine, extension of the spine. So for example, Ethan had a hard time flexing his spine because he couldn't connect to the front of his body. And that's how so I take him through specific movements, giving him some gentle touch feedback, or he gives himself feedback so he can start to feel how to connect to that pattern, right? And group of muscles.
Yeah. Can you go into that further, what that looks like? Because I know what somatics is, but, putting myself in the mind of someone else who's like, the hell is somatics? They're like, they don't know how to flex. Do you touch him and they do? And he can run faster all of a sudden? Just what is that?
Oh, yeah. And I also think that I want to back up a little bit, Keneal, and talk about just the field of somatics, because the term is being used so much lately, and I think it gets confusing. So it's a big umbrella, and I like to describe it as like, how yoga was about 30 years ago, where there was just there were like two primary schools of yoga, maybe like Ashtanga yoga, which is like now the power yoga, right? Or rigorous forms of yoga, or integral yoga. But now there's a million schools, right? There are a lot of schools. It's like, you don't just say I practice yoga. Usually you you just say, I'm Iyengar, I study Iyengar, I do yin yoga, those kinds of things. Somatic work, we're kind of in that same place right now where there are many different schools of somatic work. There's somatic psychology, there's somatic experiencing, Laura, right? Peter Levine's work. Thomas Hanna's work is of the body and it's neuromuscular repatterning. It's education. So I'm teaching someone, teaching their nervous system so that they can be autonomous and self-regulating and do the work on their own. So I studied Alexander technique, for example, and Alexander came before Tom Hanna. Alexander gave us, each school of somatic work gives us some interesting thing that gets folded in, right? Alexander technique is very much about how noticing and sensing how you're moving, paying attention to what's the quality of the movement. What do I notice as I'm moving? So Hanna comes from the Feldenkrais school of somatic work. Some people have heard of Feldenkrais work. He was actually a Feldenkrais trainer and practitioner before he went a little bit further into the neuroscience of the work.
So basically, pain has like a pathway that
Yes,
comes from the brain, right? So by doing this movement, we're creating new pathways,
exactly.
basically, and that's why it can reduce pain.
Yeah, well, it's, yeah, I mean, I have had, a lot, I've been doing this work for about 10 years, and I didn't come to this work because I had pain, which is interesting, right? I came to this work to help Ethan be more efficient and function better. So we're intricate, complicated beings, right? So sometimes people come for pain. Sometimes people come because they want to be more efficient and feel stronger. Some people come to me because they're feeling numb and they know that they're missing something, right? So that could be the emotional piece. You might see more of that, for example, in your practice, Laura. So it's a combination of things. But basically, I see my work as helping people connect to efficient and more functional movement. It's developmental, right? We're just restoring the way maybe we were when we were free in our movement as a child, right? Being able to run and jump and do all the things, right? Without any restriction. That's the idea.
If
Yeah.
someone's experiencing pain or
Yes.
similar to what your son was experiencing, which is low tone in
Yes.
which happens quite often,
Yes.
why is this helpful versus just going to the gym or just taking a regular yoga class, right? Because that's what the people are gonna say. Why can't I just go to the gym and strengthen my core, right? Why can't I do some crunches and sit-ups and bridges? Why do I have to do somatic?
So the word soma just means an experience from within. So when you practice a specific school of somatic work, the idea is to develop a deeper sense and knowledge of yourself, sensing yourself. So I don't teach people exercises. I guide them to explore movement and to sense what might be getting in the way of connecting to efficient movement, like Ethan running, for example. Yeah, with feeling grounded and connected and strong, right? So the brain controls muscle function, that we know, right? It's the primary purpose of the brain is to move us, right? To move toward the things we want and to run away from the things we don't want. And if we lose that capacity and ability to just function, to protect ourselves or to go toward our desires, we are diminished in some way, right? Emotionally, right? As well.
So it sounds like to me, some of the work that I do and you do, it's similar. We do a lot of with somatic experience, some grounding and having people feel into their strength.
Mm-hmm.
And when they feel into their strength and feel their spine and feel their shoulders, it can create almost like an imprint in their brain. Oh, this is what this feels like.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I explained that correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. So waking up sensory awareness, and there are different ways to do that, right? So, okay, so I would also describe maybe, and this is an overlap for the work that you do, somatic experiencing, and Tom Hanna's work, is that it's an embodied way to sense how integrated we are, that we're a living system. We're not just parts. I love this. Gabor Mate talks about this in his book. Oh, I have it down here somewhere. I'll get it in a moment, but he talks about learning about the body and and from a medical perspective as all of these systems, right? We're all of these systems. We're the circulatory system and the endocrine system, right? But they're integrated. However, the medical profession doesn't treat us that way. We're treated as parts often, right? Oh, it's just this. Your shoulder is isolated from the rest of you. It has nothing to do with your hip. What I do is a very integrated approach. It's looking at someone as a soma, an integrated system from within, as opposed to a body of distinct and separate parts. That's one way of describing it. So somatic work, any somatic work should be an integrative one. Meditation is a somatic work. It heightens your internal awareness, but maybe it's going through the mind and through thought instead of going through the body. But you pay attention, right, to breath and what you're noticing, what you're sensing. The work that I do, we start with sense awareness, using feedback, the feedback of the floor, going through basic movements to repattern movements and get around strong habits that you have into a new neural pathway, right?
So if someone comes to you with pelvic pain, right? This is what we talk about quite a bit on
Yes.
this podcast.
Yeah.
That's the point. Someone
Yes.
comes with pelvic pain. I assume you work virtually and in person,
I do. Yeah.
right? So what does the process look like? Are you looking at how they move and then seeing where the dysfunction is occurring and then repatterning it there?
Yes. Yes. So and as I'm assessing someone, so whether they come to a class or they come to me for a one-on-one session, a class is a little bit harder because there's a group of people, but I'm looking at the whole, of them, and I'm also guiding them to sense. So the way that they walk, I start to assess as soon as I see somebody walk in. Of course, I'm sure, Keneal, you do the same thing, or you probably both do the same thing. So it's a re-education or just a reframing of how they think about themselves. Because often people will say, oh, no, my problem is all in my shoulders. Or if it's pelvic pain, it's my problem is, I've got pain and I've got a rotated pelvis, for example. I had a fall or in childbirth, one side of my pelvis. I know what's wrong with me. Right. I said, okay, that's all right. Well, you're here because you want more information. Let's talk about the other things I see, which is I'm looking at the whole pattern. Tom Hanna helped us identify 3 basic neurological patterns: flexion, extension, red light reflex, a flexion of a pattern of protection, extension, which is what propels us out into the world. He called it a green light reflex, and a reflex that pulls our body laterally, which is also what's required for walking and rotation, right? So this reflex of being able to control the sides of the body. So I'm looking to see where there is an imbalance or a disconnect there. And I start with what's primary. It's sometimes, depending on where they're experiencing the pain is not the origin of the problem, as you know, right? So it's been years of accumulation. And so we have to if someone is so tense because they've been bracing against some specific pain, the nervous system has to calm down in order for the tension to start to be unraveled. And that's that's what the process is. I'm guiding someone through that, whether it's one-on-one or in a class, for example. I had this happen recently in a class, actually, and I'll get back to the specific pelvic pain, where she was new to the class, and I was asking this question with just standing and assessing, like, how much work is it right now? How much work is it right now to be standing where you are or even sitting where you are? Like, does it feel easeful, or does it feel like there's a lot of work? And you might not even know the answer to that question until after the movement practice and we explore how to turn off your nervous system, to turn down the volume of tension. So that's what I teach people to do, is how it's a very embodied way of turning down tension and working with the nervous system, right? To be more resilient. So if tension does occur again, that you have a method and a way to ease out of it. And this comes back to this perspective of us as a system. I was talking to one of my students who ended up becoming a teacher of this work, and she's had some pretty severe pelvic pain. And she said, and I said, what was it? Remind me, what was it about this work that was different for you, that helped you address the pain that you were experiencing? And she said, I didn't realize how many layers of tension I had in my body, that it wasn't just the pelvic floor, that it was my psoas, and it was this whole pattern of tightening the front of my body, and that my back and my hips also had a lot to do with it. So she was describing this, it's like an unraveling so that you can kind of get to where the primary holding might be.
So someone notices where they're holding tension, holding tension.
Yes.
How is it just the awareness that stimulates or encourages the unraveling? Or I assume there's like movements. Are there any particular movements that people are doing?
Yes, yes. So appandiculation is what directs the brain's attention to a specific group of muscles, right? Or a pattern. We can do a little exercise here, and I know some people will be listening and not watching, but it's a very simple thing. Anybody can do this.
Absolutely.
So wherever you're sitting, I'm gonna demonstrate as if people are watching. I'm coming to the edge of my chair so that my feet are flat on the ground. We're gonna pandiculate the shoulders, right? People hold a lot of tension in their shoulders, and this is a great example of the method that we use to turn down the volume of tension. There are three parts to appandiculation. It's a very specific choreographed yawn, is how I would describe it. So everyone knows how to shrug their shoulders, right? I can shrug my shoulders quickly, right? But then I don't notice. It's like, okay, I lift them up and I can drop them without control. Appandiculation is different. So we're going to shrug our shoulders up to our ears and hold it for a moment. Your brain's attention now is at the top of your shoulders where the contraction is. You turn the volume up, right, on that action. And then control the lowering of your shoulders. Maybe take multiple breaths, slow, smooth, and notice. You might feel jumping. You might feel it. The shoulders are moving at a different rate. When you feel like you're at the bottom, you've let your shoulders go completely, take another breath and just see if there's a little bit more to soften. Yeah. So that extra moment, right? There's a little bit more to drop into. So there are three parts to that movement that some of us do all the time. We don't even realize it. We're just becoming more conscious to our shoulder shrug. So shrug your shoulders up again. Hold at the top. Notice if your lower back is engaging or tightening. Can you let your lower back soften? Just dial down that effort. Focus your attention. Keep your focus on your shoulders as you slowly control the lowering. And if you start to notice some jumping and shaking, see if you can just breathe and smooth it out. Maybe slow it down. Keep breathing. And again, when you feel like you're at the bottom, like you've hit the bottom floor in the elevator, take another breath. Let go completely. Yeah. So you might feel like your shoulders dropped a little bit, or even your nervous system kind of calmed down, or your breath deepened a little bit. The three parts that are important or that make this action, that's a really common everyday action, turn it into an effective change of pattern, is conscious contraction, directs the brain's attention. The slow, controlled release is new learning. That's the new neural pathway. It shows the brain that instead of moving the shoulders this much, you can actually do a fuller, longer release. And when you let go completely, the brain integrates a new awareness, a new spot where there's more control. Your shoulders drop a little bit. Where you turn on the muscles, where you turn on a group of muscles, you can then turn them off if you're conscious to it, right? So that's the piece that's tricky, right?
I had a lot of jumping on my left side.
Which is, can I just say this? So the feedback that you get, the jumping, shaking, quivering, is what Thomas Hanna described as sensory motor amnesia. That's the amnesia. That's the memory loss of your brain's control. It's like instead of a straight path to the brain, to the muscle function, it's like a zigzag. Pandiculating clears that path.
So over time, the motion is supposed to be more smooth.
Yes, yes.
Then I'll have to practice that because mine was definitely, but it was funny. My left side was jumpier than my right side. My right side was much smoother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, curious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do a practice with my clients, not totally similar, but where we lean into constriction, purposefully so that, and then we facilitate the release. And when we do that, then when the body actually goes into constriction, hopefully it will facilitate the release on its own. So it reminded me of that. quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we want to look. We have Thomas Hanna used to say, we have dynamic, exciting lives, and sometimes that we get enthusiastic and we feel great, and we go out instead of going for a 5-mile walk, let's go for like a 10-mile walk uphill, and then we suffer, right? But we just want to be able to regain and to reset and to then be more resilient, to recover and persevere, right? Like we want that freedom, the freedom of choice, right?
So this exercise that you just showed us, is this something that I'm just curious that you do with everyone, like regardless if you have pelvic pain or back pain or migraines, whatever it may be?
So I think you're speaking to like what's the protocol, right? Like how do we start? So I use this little exercise as a way to introduce the method of pandiculating. Right? So it's like we're practicing, it's really a different perspective on moving. Moving slowly sometimes is hard for people. Moving with a focused intention can be fatiguing. We're working at the cortical level of the brain, which is another reason this is really effective. When you go about your day and you're like washing dishes, you're not thinking. It's really subcortical work. Walking is subcortical most of the time, unless we stop or we get stopped, right? It's a habit that is ingrained and deep, right? You wouldn't have to think about it so much, right? What we want to do is bring and heighten awareness back. The way that we approach this is we're just restoring primary function, flexion of the spine, extension of the spine, lateral movement, and rotation. So a class, for example, or even the clinical protocol one-on-one is focused that way, right? So the movements are generally the same. Tom Hanna talked about them as the cat stretch, very basic movements to reconnect.
This might be a question you can't answer, but I'm just curious. Do
Go
you
for it.
see this? Because people ask me all the time, like, how
Yes.
many sessions, Laura, before I'm going to
Oh,
get
yeah.
better? And it's like impossible to answer that question. But I'm just curious if there's like a type of protocol, like, within 10 sessions, you should start seeing a difference because what you do is different than what I do.
So this is where I love that question, by the way, because I love this work has helped me really appreciate the challenge of we're also just the more questions I can invoke, then I know I'm on the right path with someone, because I like, who's got the answer? I don't have the answer. You're a unique person. I don't know what it feels like to be in your body. And that's not me as a professional, like trying to abdicate responsibility. It's about, I'm trying to empower people to sense and trust themselves, right? Which is I'm not sure. Like that can be a long process. So here's how and I train practitioners. So this is part of, the way that I work. We have Tom Hanna developed this work with a specific protocol, one-on-one. It's about 6 sessions, usually. But I work where I see people for 1 session, and then we make a decision together about how to proceed. Because sometimes that person, things will integrate quickly, they'll understand, or they've come with other somatic work, so they have sort of a basic foundation, and then they can come to class or a workshop, and then that's all they need. So it's very unique to the situation and where they are, and if it needs to be, the work needs to resonate with people and make sense. There has to be, I like to describe it as a buy-in. And, look, I work with a lot of people who are so excited because they feel amazing. They're like, oh my God, my partner needs to come to this work, and my mother. That's like, yeah, but that's great. They need to want to be here, or even kids. I work with teenagers too, sometimes, depending on the situation. Very, very unique to the soma, right? Everyone's unique.
How do you feel about any movement can become a somatic movement?
Oh, I love that. I agree with that completely. Obviously, I've mentioned that was a professional dancer. I practice yoga. I apply the principles of this somatic work and pandiculation to my yoga practice. And to really everything I do. I like to hike, I ride a road bike. All of those things become movement research and exploration, and even done some rock climbing. Not well, but I've done it. And it's kind of fun to explore that stuff with a different perspective and maybe connect, more deeply. So it's information that improves the effectiveness and efficiency of any movement.
Seems like just like a mindfulness practice too, right?
It is. It is often described as a moving meditation. Yeah, because it's so focused. I mean, if you think about meditation as a focus on something, right? You can be washing dishes and meditating, right? Folding laundry is a good one, I think. Can be. Yes. So as a teacher and a practitioner, guiding with my language someone's attention and focus as they're moving.
So in that mindfulness of it, right, is it more, somatics were focused on the body? Is it more you have them focus on what this feels like, the muscle contraction versus the lengthening versus the relaxation? Or is there also like sensory input in that as well?
Yeah, it's all of the above. So I'm guiding with words. Sometimes I'm, especially if it's on Zoom or even in a class, I'm asking them to touch their ribs. As you curl into yourself, can you feel your ribs move and sink or close down? You want to be able to control these parts of your body that may have been stuck in brace from an injury or an accident or just stress, right? So it's inviting a connection, reconnecting to something that might not be moving. So we use whatever we have at our facility, right? Language, touch, to wake up the senses, even motor planning, right? Which is just thinking and imagining your way through. So people who really can't move or are afraid to move, just visualizing movement is a really can be a very powerful thing. It's a little bit what you were talking about, Laura, of like just, or imagining, can you let go or release your spine or whatever it is, whatever the words you use, right? Words have a big impact.
Words have a huge impact.
They're a sensory motor, they go through the sensory motor cortex of the brain, right? So it's all movement. There's a neurological physical response. Yeah.
Words are so important. It's when I get off the phone with people for consults, sometimes their pain will go down just in the consult. So I'm really not even doing anything. I'm just talking to them, seeing if we're a good fit, telling them a little bit what did I do. But when I offer them hope that, if I could get better, they could get better, and this is going to go away, there is a buy-in with this too, with,
Yes.
Understanding this is a mind-body condition. But so it's not, there's so many similarities. And what we do with somatic experiencing is we give people a lot of time and space.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what's happening with the movements, giving each movement time and space.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Like you work with a lot of different practitioners or like co-treat as well. Because I'm thinking, if anyone's listened to this podcast that, I'm thinking of what separates as a physical therapist, right? I'm thinking of what separates traditional PT, which I do not do,
Yes.
with what I call it integrative PT, right? Or holistic PT.
Right.
And there is a lot of somatics brought into it. You just mentioned like visualizing movement. I do utilize that practice quite a bit, and there's a lot of science to back that up. And that's a pretty actual common practice in even traditional PT of just, if it hurts too much to move it, let's imagine that we're moving it, because the brain don't know the difference between actually doing it and thinking about doing it, because the whole mirror neurons thing. So I'm just wondering if you do work with and alongside with other practitioners, because I know there are some practitioners where they would recommend like, oh, you're doing too much, like it's not going to be helpful to do this and physical therapy, or it's not going to be helpful to do this and chiropractic work, right? So how does it work with somatic?
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm so glad we need more PTs that don't work traditionally, right? And I describe it this way, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had some PTs come through our teacher training program just to have a deeper understanding of, another option, which is sometimes if the protocol, like from your perspective, Keneal, or traditional PT, is to strengthen something that is weak, that's a problem because from my perspective, I know that I need to help someone connect to their ability to move a muscle or group of muscles, and then they can work with their PT to strengthen. That's usually how I work or partner with traditional, whether it's a kinesiologist or PT, or uh, physiologist. Yeah, that's the basic thing, right? It's like connection and then strength, right?
I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like we work in a similar way.
Yeah, otherwise you're continuing to like create that pattern of compensation, right?
Exactly. You're strengthening these patterns that are not
Yes.
actually useful and functional. Yeah. So for me, I call that, and maybe this is just a PT thing, but we call that coordination. Like you have to have the coordination
Yes.
before you develop strength, right? And I find how I work, like that's me. I'm the coordination PT because that's what we're working on is the coordination because I'm not gonna I go to people's houses, or I had when I did have like an actual location. So I'm going to people's houses. So they don't have big gym equipment. So we're not doing
Yes.
these big old muscle bulking activities. It's really just we're getting the coordination down. And then once they have that, it's like, okay, you can go to Pilates now, or you can go to yoga, or you can go to the gym and do
Yeah.
whatever it is that you do there because you have the right patterning, right? You have the pattern down, and we call that neuromuscular re-education. We're just
Yes.
re-teaching the brain
Yes.
and the muscle to have that connection and how to move effectively and efficiently.
Exactly. So once now you teach them that connection, you help them reestablish it, they use it. You want them to use it in bigger movement, right? More feedback. Yeah.
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 So it's
That's
it's
great.
actually built into PT. We do learn these things, but gosh, the systems, we can talk about how messed up the systems are,
I know.
right? That
Yeah.
because we know it. We know these things. I learned these things
Yeah.
in school, but when you get into the real world, when insurance is driving things, the
Yeah.
insurance doesn't want to know that you spent 30 minutes teaching them how to breathe and lift their legs slowly. They want to know that you did,
Yeah.
3 sets of 10 of this exercise.
Back to the system that's broken, right? And that doesn't support the whole. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know that you're working differently because it's so critical. It's so needed. Yeah.
I'm just curious, when I introduced you, you have a really extensive background and we talked about dance. And I'm just curious how dance, does it play into your practice at all? Or if it doesn't, how does it play into your life now?
Well, I dance around the house as much as I can. I mean, I still have that dancing spirit. Do I get to, I don't know. I actually have a friend coming to one of my dance sisters coming to visit me in a couple of weeks. And so, we sometimes we'll go to an improv jam or something like that, or sort of, I don't know. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but I don't do it enough probably, but there's always the hope that I can make some more time for that. But it informs. I was fortunate to work with a choreographer that was very exploratory and very somatic, even though we didn't use that word back in the late 90s to describe what we were interested in or how we were working. So I feel like I've been on this same, it's sort of, even though I've done different things, whether it's been in education or in movement, dance, yoga, all of that stuff, and then working with teachers and professional development, I feel like it's all kind of the same thing, which is looking at the whole and considering, where creativity lies in freedom, right? You can't have creativity and restriction. So that's what I've come to with all of this. It's like, well, how do we flourish? How do we expand? How do we want things to flow. And I know from my days creating, I mean, I still feel like I'm creating, but when I was in the dance studio, it was really obvious. If I was nervous about what someone else was going to think about what I was creating, it was like putting a stopper in a bottle, right? Nothing flowed. So I love the work that I'm doing now because I feel like it's so anybody can access it. And I came from in the dance world. I came from a very, it's a very insular world. It's a pretty small world. It's pretty esoteric, downtown New York, modern dance, but wonderful beautiful work. This is accessible to anyone, any human being who wants to find freedom, right? I found freedom in the form of dance and kind of backed into this. That's how another way to think about it, right? Yeah.
Sometimes my somatic experiencing sessions, they feel like a dance,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
back and forth.
And everybody should have that joy. I mean, that's an innate, like that expression, like being able to express or emote or whatever it is very human and necessary. I think we don't realize how much we need it, right? Maybe until we lose it or we have some diminished capacity, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Is there one thing that you would share with our audience that would be like most helpful or useful around somatic?
That's hard. One thing. Yeah, I mean, I think if there's one thing, it would be to find any work, any somatic work, or any work of self-inquiry that brings you to a place of trust, trusting what you sense. Like, that's valuable work. If it brings you to a closer and deeper understanding and belief in what you feel and sense, it's good.
I love the word trust.
Yeah.
It's like trusting your body, trusting it knows what it's doing, trusting it knows how to heal. So it's such a great word. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just curious if people would like to contact you, how would they get in touch with you?
Yes. All my information is on my website, which is just my name, Gena Rho. And I know you guys will probably link that for me, for everybody. My email address is there. There's information there. There's some free audios there. There's information about classes that I teach locally. So yeah. And I always like to hear if people have questions, so just email me.
And you work with people virtually as well, right? So if someone's not local to
If
the New
somebody
Jersey
is
area.
far away, that's something that I did before COVID, and I continue to do.
Great. Thank you so much.
This was fun talking to you, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
If you'd like to leave us a message or ask a question, please check the show notes with the link so you can reach us directly, or email us at beyondthepelvis@gmail.com.